Good evening, everybody. We're going to give everybody about a minute or so to get into the room, and then we'll start our webinar this evening. For those of you just joining us, we'll get started in about a minute. Okay, let's get started. We'll let the last few minutes people kind of straggle in, but let's get started. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, a masterclass with celebrity chef Gale Gand. I'm Ron Goldberg, Senior Director of Volunteer and Digital Programs at RIT, and your moderator for this evening. Before I introduce our speaker, there are a few housekeeping points I want to go over. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions can be entered in the Q&A box at any time throughout the discussion. We'll make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those in the Q&A box as well, and we'll do our best to get you those appropriate answers. We'd like to thank our Access Services team for helping us make this webinar accessible for all of our alumni. Real-time captioning is available within the webinar, and our interpreters will be spotlighted during the presentation. The pandemic has made a major impact on everyone, including our students. We thank all of our alumni and friends for your support you have given to our students during these uncertain times. If you're interested in supporting or continuing your support, you can make a gift now by visiting rit.edu/giving today. We've also posted the link in the chat box for you. Now on to our session, where we're pleased to welcome back Gale Gand. Gale is a pastry chef and was a founder and partner in the Michelin 2-star restaurant True in Chicago. She hosted Food Network's long-running show Sweet Dreams, is the author of 8 cookbooks, and worked with Julia Child on her book and PBS series Baking with Julia. Gale teaches cooking classes all over the country and is an artisanal soda pop maker, producing Gale's Root Beer, which is sold nationally. She has received 2 James Beard Awards, went to cooking school in Paris at La Varenne, and is a graduate of RIT's School for American Craftsmen, Metalsmithing program, class of 1981. Gale appears in many food and wine festivals across the country and is a professional pie and food competition judge. She's the mother of 3 and plays the ukulele. And fun fact, Gale once made a peach cobbler for Aretha Franklin. Gale, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to you. The audience is all yours.
Yay, thank you everybody for joining me in my kitchen tonight. I'm gonna make dinner with you. Hopefully, I know a few of you are cooking along with me, so I'll try to not like chop my garlic too fast. I'll make sure that you have time to catch up with me. But thank you so much for signing up for my masterclass and for supporting RIT. You heard a little bit about my background. I graduated in 1981, and I know it doesn't seem like it's a straight line from the School for American Craftsmen to me being a pastry chef, but actually while I was at RIT, I was cooking a lot and doing a lot of food styling for the photography department. So I kind of got into food photography then, or at least doing the propping for it. But if you kind of think about jewelry and diamond setting and, making jewelry, it's very precise and, it's like little jewel-like things, just like pastries. So it actually wasn't that far a leap for me to go from being a silver and goldsmith to being a pastry chef. I also worked in restaurants the whole time while I was at RIT. As my after school job, I was working at the Strath Allen Hotel in Rochester, Hugo's in Rochester, and the University Club there. So that was sort of how that was my bread and butter and how I paid for my living expenses. And it sort of took over my life. I just love to cook. And as you guys mentioned, I had a show on the Food Network called Sweet Dreams for 10 years. And now it's actually back on the air. If you want to watch Sweet Dreams and see me 20 years younger and 20 pounds lighter, it's on Discovery Plus. They're airing a lot of the original Food Network shows. So my show, Sweet Dreams, is on there. The Hardy Boys, what's their party line is on there, which they were the winners of Next Food Network Star Season 1. So if you like old school Food Network, where we teach you how to cook, go ahead and get Discovery Plus. If you've got Verizon, you can even get it free for a year and tune into my Sweet Dreams there. But I also have a virtual cooking school. It's called Kitchen Sisters Cooking School. It's with a friend of mine who's a chef from America's Test Kitchen who lost her job during COVID. So if you guys want to take more virtual classes with me, I've got 1 in 2 weeks that's Italian desserts. That's going to be great. We've got a Thanksgiving sides class. We also do kids classes virtually. Today we had an Icelandic waffle class for kids. So you can cook with me more if you like what we do tonight. What I thought we could do together tonight is do a 1-pot pasta dish. So we're not going to make a lot of dishes, which will make my husband really happy because his job after this is to clean up after me. So we're going to do a 1-pot farfalle dish that's got lots of different vegetables in it and a goat cheese sauce. So I'm calling it 1-pot farfalle primavera. So that kind of means spring vegetables, but we're in the fall. We're just going to do green vegetables with goat cheese and lemon. So a really kind of nice, light, you know, if you're doing any meatless Mondays today, you're going to check off that box for that. So let's get started. I've got a pan here, and I think in the recipe that they sent out, I say to use a 4-quart saucepan, which is what I want you to use, but I'm using a lower one just so that you can maybe even see into my pan. So mine's going to be a little more spread out than yours is going to be probably. So the first thing I want to do, actually, I've got this cutting board here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of slippery and slidey here on my table. So I'm going to actually just take a damp paper towel and place it right on my work surface first, and then put my cutting board on top of that. And now it's much more secure. It's much safer, especially if you're cooking with kids. You want to make sure things aren't going to slide around. So that's the first thing to do, is get safe. I already washed my hands, already poured a glass of wine. If you haven't done that yet, can you guys please go ahead and pour your glass of wine. I think it was in the instructions to start with that. I've got a nice light rosé tonight that I think will go well with the goat cheese pasta. So if you've got your glass of wine ready, cheers. Just want to clink to you guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
And that was one of the first questions, Gail, was what would you suggest for wine pairing for the dish? So you you answered that one.
You know, I drink rosé with almost everything though, but I think rosé really kind of fits my cooking. I'm not a real, like, I don't do a lot of beef. I don't do a lot of heavy stuff. I do more highly seasoned poultry and pork, lighter meats, but more flavor in the ingredients. And, you know, this is sort of a lighter pasta with lemon and goat cheese. So I'm thinking a white wine is going to be what you're going to want to drink. Probably not a Sauvignon Blanc, which has kind of citrusy overtones, but is generally paired with fish. I would do, if you've got an unoaked Chardonnay from California, or a Chablis would be really nice. But I love chilled rosé. It used to just be a summer thing for me, and now it's all year long. I just think it goes really well with stuff. So let's go ahead and get the garlic chopped, because that's the first thing we're going to do, is put some olive oil in our pan and cook some chopped garlic. And I know most of you know this, but occasionally I'll get an email from someone that says I added 2 cloves of garlic to the dish and it was inedible. And I say, send me a picture of a clove of garlic. And they send me a picture of this. So I just want to point out, this is not a clove, this is a bulb. Okay, this is my public service announcement. This is a bulb of garlic. The little chambers that are inside the bulb, that's a clove. And again, you guys all probably know that, but there's one of you out there who's like, oh, I always thought a clove was like the whole big thing. So let's go ahead and break this open. I'm just gonna kind of crush it by putting my weight on it, and that'll start to break it open. And then you can peel off a couple cloves. And you know, the thing about garlic is those cloves are all different sizes. So the way I kind of judge, you know, some are bigger, some are smaller. If your last name ends in a vowel, use the bigger ones. And if your last name ends in a consonant, use the smaller ones. Because if you have a vowel at the end of your name, you're probably from a culture that likes things a little spicier. So that's just kind of my generalization. Now let's go ahead and peel the garlic. There's like a little woody end where it was connected to the bulb. What I'm going to do is cut that little woody end off. I've got my small knife here, right? So just go ahead and cut the end off of those 2 cloves. And now in order to peel it, the way that's easiest for me is I just take my big knife and lay it flat across that clove of garlic and make a fist. and just smash it. And once it smashes, what happens is that peel is so like dry, it kind of just flakes right off, whereas the inside kind of smashes. So it separates the two really easily. Let's do one more. Flat blade, right on your clove of garlic, make a fist, hit it. Also helps you feel kind of tough in the kitchen, which I think is important to feel empowered, especially in the kitchen when you've got a knife in your hand. So I kind of like smashing it. So let's go ahead and chop up that garlic with your knife. Hopefully your knife is sharp. And I've got a little container off to the side here where I'm putting all my like peels and stems and ends of stuff. That's going to go in my compost. So feel free to gather up some compost if you want. And some of it's even going to go to my chickens during COVID because I was home so much. I got backyard chickens as something to do. And one of the nice things about them are the eggs that they lay, which I think, can you guys see these right here? Yeah, there they are. The one on the top's not a chicken egg, that's a spaghetti squash, but kind of looks like one, so I thought it would be funny. But the other thing is they eat a lot of different things that you might compost. So if I've got some apples that are a little off, or strawberries that are wilted, you can give them to your chickens, and they are very thankful and happy. So I've just chopped this garlic up. It's not super fine, we don't have to mince it, but you just want to chop it up, because you don't want to hit too big a piece. And let's go ahead and start heating up our pan. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. So I just keep my olive oil in a squirty bottle because it's really easy to like squirt it around a pan, squirt it on stuff. Like if you're doing, I don't know if you guys make roasted cauliflower where you like squirt it with, coat it with a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, toss it, put it in the oven to roast. So this makes it easy to apply the olive oil by having it it's like a ketchup bottle. So just putting that in the squirty bottle. Now let's go ahead and add the garlic. And I heard a nice little sizzle. So we've already got some good heat going here. We're just going to cook that garlic for about a minute. If you go much longer than that, really it starts to get kind of burnt and bitter tasting. So we're just sort of tenderizing it. We're actually taking the starch that's in the garlic and converting it to sugar by using heat. It's just like a banana that's not ripe. That carbohydrate, those sort of starchiness of a banana, as it ripens, turns to sugar. That's what we're doing with the garlic right now. And just takes like 30 to 60 seconds is all. So the next thing we're going to do is add our farfalle pasta. This is Barilla pasta that I like to use. And I almost feel like, is Barilla in Rochester?
It is made in Rochester. Yep.
Yes. So, I'm in Chicago, but this is still the best brand, I think. So I've got farfalle, which is a really nice cut of pasta. It's what looks like a little bow tie. And we're going to use half the box, I believe. Let's just check the size. Yeah, this is 1 pound. Sometimes these boxes are 12 ounces now, so you got to check. This is 16 ounces, and we just want 8 ounces. So go ahead and add half the box of farfalle. And I'm just kind of estimating what happens.
So Gale, Mauricio is asking, he's an overachiever and made his own pasta tonight. Can you suggest how to adjust the recipe to accommodate for that?
So it's going to go in last because that pasta probably only needs like 2 minutes. And we're going to reduce the water by, I would say reduce the water by half as well, because you've already got a lot of natural moisture in your pasta. So don't add your pasta yet if you've got homemade. I can appreciate you being an overachiever, though. I too tend to do things like that. So I would wait, and if you've got your garlic in, I would either turn it off and wait for us to catch up and do your zucchini and do all your vegetables first, and then your pasta is going to go in last with like maybe a cup of water, maybe a cup and a half. All right. So I'm going to go ahead though and add the water to this. We're going to add 3 cups of water right to the pan. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. So we're still technically salting the water. My Sicilian mother-in-law always told me the water had to taste like seawater. She's, from Sicily, so surrounded by the sea when she was growing up. So go ahead and give that a stir. I'm going to turn my heat up pretty high because what we want to try to do at this point is kind of bring it to a simmer and cook it for about 5 minutes. I'll set a quick timer, though it doesn't have to be exact. And while we're waiting for that to cook, we're gonna go ahead and prep our vegetables, okay? So this is kind of flexible. And you may see in the instructions, it says to add the asparagus, because this recipe, when I made it in the spring, had asparagus in it. Right now, we're substituting zucchini for the asparagus because we are abundant with zucchini right now. It's the fall, and this is that season when everyone's trying to give you their zucchini from their garden, you know, before the frost comes. But let's go ahead and get things prepared. I'm going to just cut this zucchini up into cubes. So I'm going to cut the, you know, the root end off there, or the stem end off, and cut that little blossom end off as well. And then to cut it into cubes, what I like to do is maybe cut the zucchini in half, just so it's a little more manageable. Cut it in half again down the long ways. And then I'm cutting that in half again down the long ways. So now we've got, you know, I've cut it into like sort of sticks, like a quarter. And then we'll cut across that to get our cubes. And let me do that one more time. I've got a little bad spot here, so I'm just going to cut that out. Cut this long piece of zucchini in half. And because zucchini curves, that's why I cut the whole thing crossways in half first. It's just a little easier to deal with. So now I'm just going to cut it into cubes. These are about 1/2-inch cubes. So you can see about that size. Okay. Go ahead and get those ready.
So while you're cutting those, Gail, Amy is curious, do you have a favorite knife manufacturer?
You know, I get asked that a lot. And the problem, there's not many downsides to being a chef, except your feet hurt all the time. And I was a size 6 when I started all this 40 years ago, and I'm a 9 now. But what happens is when I do food and wine events, like next week, I'm going to go do the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival on Oahu. And probably as one of the gifts to me as a chef, they will give me a knife that's engraved with my name, which is really nice of them. But that's why I have this like oddball collection of knives from all over the place, different sizes, different brands. And I usually don't check my luggage because I'm too cheap. But now that free knife they gave me is a $30 knife, because now I got to check my luggage coming back because I can't bring a knife on the plane. They also give bottles of wine often, which again, the free bottle of wine is now costing me $30 to put in my luggage. Not that I'm ungrateful about gifts, but so to answer your question, I don't have a particular brand because I've never been able to, you know, buy my own knives basically. But I do always try to get carbon steel knives so that they are sharpenable versus stainless steel. So you want to get a knife that does require steel out of here, you know, that does require sharpening. And when you're sharpening your knife, you want to make sure someone's watching you, because you look super cool, you know, doing this. And if you do it fast and not even look at the knife when you're doing it, that's even better. And I think, like, if you were shopping at, you know, a department store, a kitchen store, Henkel is one of the brands I really like. Wusthof is another good one that chefs go for. So that gives you two places to start. All right, let's finish cutting this zucchini. You got any other questions right now?
No, that's all that's come in so far.
Oh, great. All right, the next thing we want to do is get our broccoli cut up. And I said one broccoli crown, which this is, but this is a really big one. So I realized that you know, saying one broccoli crown is kind of a loose term. What we want to end up with is about 3.5 cups of broccoli florets. And as we're cutting this up, you want to think about that you want them to be, you know, small enough that they don't need to cut them in half to fit them in their mouth. When I'm cooking for other people, I always try to think about, like, people don't want to have to open their mouth, you know, too wide in front of others just for etiquette reasons. So you want to make things sort of bite size. So we're going to cut these pieces of broccoli, you know, like that'll fit in your mouth without too much trouble, and you won't have to cut it with a knife, right? So let's go ahead and cut up 3.5 cups of broccoli florets. And I'm just going to use that same measuring cup we had the water in to measure my broccoli. So I'm cutting it off the stem. We're probably not going to use the stems. I'll save those for some other, like a stir fry or something. But go ahead and cut the like top florets off. And then if they need to be cut in half. So that's 5 minutes, but mine took a while to come up to temp. So I'm going to just say it's not 5 minutes yet, okay? But at least we're keeping track of time. So by the time we finish cutting up our vegetables, I think they might be ready to start adding. So go ahead and get your broccoli florets cut up. And you know, some of you may be smarter than me and bought them already cut up. You can buy broccoli florets now, you know, pre-done. And that's one of my tips, actually. You know, I just think that if you can get some cooking going in your house, the smell is just so wonderful and the physical activity is good, but it also kind of joins you with other people. You know, cooking for others is a really wonderful, almost philanthropic thing to do. So I really encourage you to do cooking just for mental health reasons, to be perfectly honest. But if you're someone who doesn't like to prep, you know, who just doesn't like to cut up stuff, feel free to buy it already done. If that's the holdup for you, like if you want to make a pie, but the holdup is the crust, there's two solutions. One is take my pie boot camp that I've got in November. It's one of my virtual classes at Kitchen Sisters Cooking School, or just buy the crust already made. I'm totally fine with that. If that gets a pie in your oven and that gets your house smelling like pie and gets your family pie, then I'm all for it. So if the holdup with some of these, you know, vegetable-centric pasta dishes is you just don't feel like cutting stuff up, most grocery stores now, like they have butternut squash cut up, they've got cauliflower already broken up, they've got broccoli florets. A lot of stuff is already prepped out there for you if you look for it, okay? So don't be shamed by the fact that you're not cutting everything up. Even your garlic, you can buy chopped garlic, so it's already done for you. My deal is I want you cooking in the kitchen. I want you to have the experience of making a dish yourself, crafting a dish yourself, and feeding it to others. There's nothing like it. It's the most wonderful, joyful thing I do, and I want you guys to have that same experience. All right, so next thing we want to do is add the zucchini and the broccoli. So zucchini's going in.
So Gail, a question came in about the broccoli and whether you have any tips on having the broccoli stay in one piece while you're cutting it.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but what I was doing was sort of cutting it off where it starts to fork, like just below the fork in the road. So you've got, you know, those pieces stay together, but then some of them, you know, they're too big and I was sort of cutting them in half. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I do. So I'm going to go ahead and add that broccoli.
James, if that doesn't answer the question, let us know and we can, we'll ask Gail. So, and then Jeff wanted to know how Gracie's Dining Hall impacted you or any good memories.
Wow. I haven't thought about that place in a long time. Sorry. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like a specific thing that I used to have there. I think I used to bring Parmesan cheese. Could you get popcorn at school? I feel like we could buy popcorn, but I used to bring Parmesan cheese from home and steal like the black pepper packets and sprinkle that on my popcorn. So even back then, like I was sort of, you know, altering the recipe, not sticking to the program. I want to ask the question back to was it
Jeff.
him or her that asked
It was Jeff.
Jeff, what about you? I want to hear what you were eating there. That's so funny. I don't remember the food, to be honest.
That might be a good thing.
Well, maybe I never left the studio. You know, metalsmithing people were like really hardcore. And I don't know that we ventured over there that much. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to cook this for about 3 minutes and then we'll add the peas. And then we're going to be adding the goat cheese and the cream and everything. So we've got our peas ready. I just got 2/3 of a cup. These are frozen peas. There's really, you know, if you're going to use peas, These are some of the best because they pick them when they're ripe. You know, they flash freeze them. They're reliable. They're nice and green. If you want to like shuck your own peas and blanch them, that's fine. But like I said, you know, it's more about sort of getting something on the table and getting the experience of eating a dish you made than anything else. You know, while this is cooking, let's go ahead and toast the pine nuts, because one thing we want to have for garnish at the end, I guess I asked you for 2 tablespoons of pine nuts. I'm just gonna heat up a little saute pan here, and I've got some pine nuts that I bought at the grocery store, but they've never been toasted. And if we toast them, they'll have a lot more flavor. And they were in the freezer. They're very freezable, but you know, they might get a little soggy in the freezer. So this will also kind of freshen them up. I'm just gonna go ahead and put these in a saute pan and throw them on the stove over here. So you can either saute them the way that I am. Well, then my little igniter won't turn on. That's annoying. Let me try a different burner. Or you could also do it in a toaster oven. That would be fine too. You just lay them on a toaster oven. I just feel like if I put them in the toaster oven, they're way behind me. They're kind of out of my sight, and I'm more likely to burn them or overcook them. Whereas if I've got them in a saute pan here, you know, I can kind of give them a shake every so often, make sure that they're cooking evenly. And if you want to do that you know, cool toss that chefs do, you know how we like shake stuff and then kind of toss it in the pan. The way that chefs learn how to do that or teach themselves how to do that is you start out with a cold pan, like a room temperature pan, and just put some rice in it. And then shake the rice back and forth, and then kind of quickly just yank the pan back, and it'll cause the rice to go up and over into the pan, and you'll learn how to flip stuff that way. So do it, you know, with a pan that's not hot at first, and maybe do it over the bathtub or a sink in case it goes everywhere. But that's a good way to start learning how to toss stuff in a pan to get it to turn over itself.
So Gail, Nina's curious, do you have any recommendations for a replacement for pine nuts for anyone who might be allergic?
Sure, walnuts are great. You know, pine nuts are pretty high fat nuts, so you're looking for a nut that's got that's fairly mild and high in fat. Just you're looking for the richness of them. So I'd say chop up some walnuts would work. But if you're allergic to pine nuts, you may be allergic to walnuts also. So if you want an alternative to pine nuts, like to nuts in general, what would I use instead? I think I would probably make like some garlicky croutons. You know, just cut up some bread into little cubes, do some olive oil in your pan, throw the cube bread in, and salt and pepper on it, and toss them to kind of brown them. The other thing I like to use is Panko Crumbs. I don't know if you guys know what those are. They're Japanese breadcrumbs. So they're breadcrumbs not made from toasted bread, but made from shredded white bread that's never been toasted. So it's like a bigger crumb that's a little fluffier. And sometimes I'll just toast those in a pan with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. And they make a nice little crunchy topping. You know, actually, I have some here. Like they're a great little topping for soup. These are just toasted Panko crumbs that I did with a little salt and pepper. And at the very end, I added like a pinch, no, like a teaspoon, bigger than a pinch, of Parmesan cheese. And the heat of the Panko crumbs kind of makes the cheese like stick and melt to it. It's kind of delicious. So that would be another suggestion, is some kind of toasted breadcrumb. All right. And you can season that up too. Like if you want to put, you know, garlic powder, or onion powder, or paprika on them or something like that. Smoked paprika. Just giving my pine nuts a little toss. You can see they're still pretty pale, but there's a couple little spots that are toasting. So we know we've got some heat. But just don't let me forget those, because I don't want them to get away from me. All right, next thing that's going to go into the pasta is the frozen peas. And we're going to cook it a couple minutes longer. So I'm saying it's time. It looks like my broccoli is like crisp tender. So cooked, but not, you know, overcooked. So go ahead and sprinkle in your green peas. They might still be a little frozen. That's fine. We'll just cook that for about 2 minutes. And I can't remember the name of the person who has this fresh pasta, but don't add it yet. Still not there. All right, with my pine nuts, they've got some toasting going on, but they're not quite done. But I'm going to turn the burner off and just use the heat of the pan to finish them off. Okay, because my pans are pretty thick and they'll continue to cook. All right, the next thing we need to get ready is our goat cheese. So I've just got a little log of fresh goat cheese here, and it's a 4-ounce log. We actually only need 3 ounces of this, but let's cut the wrapper off and get it open and ready to go.
So Gail, Jeff said 1982. His Gracie memory is cheeseburger with everything, tomatoes, lettuce, etc.
Was there anything unique about it? That just sounds like a cheeseburger. There we go. I'm glad to know we had good burgers.
So somebody's also asking whether they can use a different cheese other than goat cheese.
I was waiting for that question because there are a lot of people out there that either don't like goat cheese, or they think they don't like goat cheese, or they think their family doesn't like goat cheese. If you're in the last category where you just think your family doesn't like it, don't tell them it's in it. It's really just going to provide some like dairy overtones. But if you don't like goat cheese, I will let you use cream cheese instead. So we're just looking for something that's pretty light and not super flavorful, but is going to thicken the sauce slightly as it melts. Okay, so let's go for cream cheese. And then we're also going to need a 1/2 cup of heavy cream. That's going to be part of the sauce. And then we're going to need some basil. I've got some here. We're going to cut up to kind of make 2 tablespoons worth. So I'm thinking that's about maybe like 5 big leaves. I'm just pulling it off the stem. We're not going to add the stem to it. But let's go ahead and just kind of chop across those leaves. I'm going to go long ways. Move stuff so you can see what I'm doing. Long ways, and then I'll go across it the other way. So it's just like a rough chop on that basil. And, you know, I've got a nice little pile here. That's probably 2 tablespoons worth. And then we're also going to need a lemon to zest. Now with this lemon, since we're just using the zest, you want to wash it first and then just make sure there's no label on it. And I know that sounds funny, but a lot of times there's like still a label. And I have this one friend, she always gets like the bay leaf, you know, or the stick or the grapevine or the label that gets left on for some reason. So I'm extra careful to take that label off. And what we want to do is zest about a teaspoon worth. I'm going to use a microplane, which is kind of the fan favorite nowadays for zesting citrus. It's related to a wood plane, but some sweet husband made a small one for his wife, and it's a much easier way to zest citrus than like on a box grater. So I'm just going to go ahead. I like to wipe my fruit against my microplane. I sort of anchor it on a flat surface and then just kind of wipe it across. Some people do it the opposite. They like scrub the microplane across the lemon, but because the rind comes out the back side, I don't want to lose any of that. And if you've got it sort of hanging, you know, free floating in the air, you might lose some of the rind. So I just do it over a cutting board, and that way I'm able to capture any rind that comes off the back. You can just kind of like hit it onto your cutting board, and there's all your lemon rind right there.
So Gail, Andy's wondering, can the recipe be doubled, or would that make the cooking time too long for the sauce to come together?
No, you can absolutely double it. No problem at all. Go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients. We're going to add the goat cheese, the cream, the basil, the lemon zest, and some pepper. So I'm just dumping my whole board in there, my lemon zest, basil board. We're going to do I'm doing all the goat cheese except for 1 ounce. And I know it says to crumble it, but my goat cheese is pretty soft and I took it out ahead of time. So I'm just gonna go ahead, maybe cut it into like 2 hunks and add it, but then we'll stir it in. And then let's go ahead and add the heavy cream.
So Mauricio wants to know, should he add his fresh pasta now?
I think you should add your fresh pasta now. Yes. Though I think, did you add some water earlier to get your vegetables cooked? I'm thinking now you probably needed to do that. So go ahead and start stirring. The goat cheese just sticking to my spoon here, so I gotta knock it off a little bit. And we're gonna add some pepper as well. Once we've got that goat cheese all stirred in and like dissolved into the sauce, we'll taste this and see how this, do the seasonings need adjusting? Do we want more lemon notes? Does it need more pepper? We've got one last chance there to kind of adjust things. And we're still, cooking this. We're still simmering this to kind of thicken the sauce. But let's go ahead and add some pepper. I'm going to turn mine up because I added that cold cream, so it kind of like shut down all my simmering action.
So Mary Kay's wondering, if she used dry basil, how much should she add?
I'm going to say add a teaspoon. So a lot less. But dry basil has a distinct flavor that's kind of different than fresh basil. And fresh basil is pretty fluffy. So I'm going to say like just a teaspoon would be fine. Okay. I'm just going to have a sip of wine. And then I thought I could show you my James Beard Awards if you want to see them. I like to keep them in the kitchen. That way, if my husband criticizes my cooking, I can say, gee, honey, I don't know where your James Beard Awards are, but mine are hanging right here. So poor guy doesn't stand a chance, right? So this is what a James Beard Award looks like. So I have 2 of them, one for Outstanding Pastry Chef and one for Best Service at True, at my fancy pants fine dining restaurant I had for 18 years. So these are kind of like an Oscar in my industry. And when you receive a James Beard Award, you've been voted on to receive one by your peers, but also by journalists. So it's not just a popularity contest. It has to do with, whether you've made an impact on the industry, are your work standards high? And often you've got a restaurant, so they're looking at your restaurant as well. So they're a big honor to have. And they're especially nice if I'm like going for an interview for a consulting job. I can always bring them with and kind of act like they're really heavy and be like, gee, where should I put my James Beard Awards down before we talk about my pricing? Okay. There's a story I heard about, what was the name of the woman in the Poseidon Adventure? I want to say Shirley, but that's not it. Big woman, what's her name? Trivia contest here.
I know, I'm terrible. Somebody. See if anyone comes up with it.
You want to know who knows?
Kathy Bates?
No, good guess, but older than Kathy Bates, and bigger. Curly hair. Oh, I can't remember her name. Anyway, she was going for the audition for the Poseidon Adventure movie, and she already had an Oscar. And so she was a little insulted that she was asked to have to audition.
Shirley Winters?
Shirley, say it again?
Shirley Winters.
Yeah, Shelley Winters. So Shelley Winters comes in with her Oscar and she's like, excuse me, where should I put my Oscar down before I audition for this part? Like, she was so insulted. It was very cute. I hear it was a cute moment. All right, let's go ahead and just taste and see what's going on. So we're tasting a couple things. We're tasting for seasoning, but we're also tasting to see if our pasta is cooked enough. And again, vowels on the end of your name. Probably want your pasta a little more al dente. Mine's still a little too al dente, even for my husband, whose last name is Sedita. So he has a vowel at the end, but I think it still needs to cook a little bit more. But that sauce is delicious and the salt level is perfect. It's great. Can you guys taste yours and tell me, does it need anything? I'm gonna actually add a little more pepper to mine and a little more lemon. I'm gonna kind of lemon this up. I think it could use it. So let's go ahead and grate a little more lemon over it. I don't want to add the juice of the lemon because that could actually curdle our sauce. That high acid could have a reaction with the dairy in there and, you know, make the proteins kind of grab together. And you mentioned that I had a chance to cook with Julia Child. In the 90s, she was writing a cookbook called Baking with Julia. And I was working at a restaurant, my first restaurant I ever owned at that point was called Trio in Evanston. And my phone rang in my pastry kitchen. And there was that voice on the phone. And I'm not sure how you're gonna sign this, but I picked up the phone and on the other line was, "Hello, Gale." You know, this very falsetto voice. "This is Julia Child calling." Which, you know, she almost doesn't have to say her name. I mean, everyone knows that voice, so it's so cute that she identifies herself. And then she said, "I want to know if you want to be in my new book." Which again, kind of a redundant question. Like, who's going to say, "No, I don't want to"? So I thought it was very, you know, darling that she would act like as if she needed to ask. But she explained she was writing a book called Baking with Julia, and she doesn't really bake. And so she was contacting her favorite pastry chefs to help her write the book. And we each got a different chapter. And if you got your recipes in on time, you got to go to her house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and film an episode or two for the PBS series, you know, that went with the book. So if you Google Julia Child PBS or Baking with Julia PBS, Gale Gand, you'll see our episodes. I get to do 2 of them. My chapter I was given was the phyllo chapter because I did interesting things with phyllo at the time. And when I got there to her house, she called everyone darling because she could never remember anyone's name. And when she saw me, she's like, "Oh, darling, I can't wait to cook with you." Oh, wait, no, dearie. She called us dearie. "Oh, dearie, I just can't wait to cook with you tomorrow." She goes, "You know, she says, I've never worked with phyllo, whatever you call that stuff. And I can't wait to learn about it from you." And I had this weird moment where, like, wait, did Julia Child just say she can't wait to learn something from me? I looked down to see if my pants were on inside out, or, you know, like, am I in opposite world? And, you know, she wanted to write this book about baking, but really didn't know that much. So she called us the 27 voices that she contacted. And we each got sort of different, you know, aspects of baking that we would illustrate. Someone got flatbreads, you know, someone did yeast doughs. So I got to go to her house and cook with her for a few days. And if you go watch the shows, they're darling. I'm very blonde. You know, this is like 1995. So it's before I have children. Very, you know, so I'm thin, I'm blonde. It's before the Food Network got a hold of my eyebrows. So I have these like bushy Muriel Hemingway eyebrows like I had at school, if any of you remember me when I was at RIT. And I'm soft-spoken. So I'm like shy, kind of demure. And, you know, Julia was almost 6 feet tall. Luckily, she had scoliosis, so she was like 5'10" when I worked with her, and I'm about 5 feet. So it's this very sort of Mutt and Jeff thing where she's like towering over me. And but darling, it's like a grandma and granddaughter. And it's before I was media trained. So I'm very soft-spoken, but it's very sweet. So if you get a chance to watch that, do. And then go watch Sweet Dreams next, and you'll see sort of the difference once I got my own show. The thing is, after I was done working with Julia, I remember the very last take we did on the last show, you know, and when you do television, when you're done, they yell, "Okay, you know, that's a wrap." And when we finished, I started crying. I like burst out crying. And they're like, "Gale, what's wrong? Like, do we need to reshoot the last segment? Did you make a mistake? What's wrong?" And I'm like, no, everything went fine. It's over. And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You don't understand. Like, the last 2 years, you know, I've been talking about when I go to Julia's and when Julia and I cook together, and, you know, when Julia and I make this in her kitchen, and it's over." And like, it was almost like I didn't know what else to do. Like I had peaked at such a young age. I've cooked with Julia Child, now what? And of course there was more to do. There was getting your own show. But at the time, you know, we didn't think anyone was going to get their own show. So it was a very sort of emotional experience working with Julia. So I'm thinking my pasta is done and ready. How is yours looking? I'm going to spoon some out of the bowl.
One of our viewers says that theirs seems a little thin or runny and was wondering, will it thicken on its own or what should they do?
Well, you want to cook it down some, but you know, without overcooking your vegetables. So if you want to just give it like 2 minutes of really high heat to reduce that sauce, but also as it cools, it will thicken somewhat. Let me show you. So I don't know if it's going to come across, but mine sort of looks like a cream sauce right now. And my broccoli is still green. That's the goal. But if you've got to cook it a little longer to thicken that sauce, you know, just kind of keep an eye on your vegetables that they're not getting too overcooked. And then I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle some of the pine nuts right on top. Give a little crunch, little contrast. So here's the finished dish. And, you know, I'm sort of trying to stretch this out because we have an hour of time together, but you can see how easy and fast this dish is. You know, this took like a half an hour and I was, you know, telling jokes a lot of the time. So it's, you know, it's a really quick, easy dish, but I'm going to taste mine. Tell me how yours is. You ready to give a taste? It's a little hot. Careful.
And while you're tasting, once you're done, Amy wants to know when the last time you were on campus, which I know the answer to this, but she wants to know what were your impressions of campus?
So, hold on, the broccoli is really hot, but that is really good. And I love the crunch. The last time I was on campus was in July of this year. So every year I take a trip to Cooperstown, New York, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is, because my husband's a baseball nut. So we go for induction every year. Last year there was no induction. This year it was, they actually ended up postponing it till September, but we had already like made our plans to visit our friends when it was supposed to be in July. So we went anyway. Our kids are at camp, at sleepaway camp. So we drove to Cooperstown. And on the way home, we stayed overnight in Rochester. And the next morning I went to RIT to show my husband the campus. And he's my third husband. So like my first husband, Brian, went to RIT. He was in the film department there. My second husband, Rick Tremonto, is a chef from Rochester. But I was done with school by that point. And so my third husband, Jimmy, who I've been married to, we got married in 2003. So almost 20 years now. Had never seen it. And he went to college at Binghamton. So he's a New Yorker. He's from Long Island. And we go to New York State all the time, but we had just never gone to the campus. I think 2 years ago, I surprised him with, he loves lighthouses. And there's a lighthouse near Rochester that it's like an Airbnb that you can rent, or it's a bed and breakfast actually. So we stayed there, but again, we still didn't go to the campus. So we went to campus just this July. And I could not believe how huge it was. Huge. We came in sort of like a side way or a back way. So there was all this, on-campus housing, which I don't remember any of that being there in 81. I lived behind Jeremiah's Tavern. When I went to RIT, I lived off campus it was like an apartment that was built in an old dairy. I don't know if it's still there. It was like 1 block from Culver. I can't remember the name. What's the street that Jeremiah's Tavern's on? Someone tell me. But I lived in like an apartment, so I would drive to school every day. And so I don't remember all that housing, but it must be like 4 times as big as when I went to school there. But having said that, found the metals department, no problem. Found my school, found the gallery there, was able to I could point to where my desk or, my workbench was. We couldn't get in because it was locked. But I was able to like show my husband where I went to school and where I hung out. And then I had a lot of friends that were in the woodworking department. So I was showing him that too, who I'm still friends with. I'm curious if you guys are still friends with anyone you met at RIT. My friend Hans Cook, he was in the photography department, and his wife Amelia Kennedy was in woodworking, and we're still friends. And actually he's coming to visit next week. He lives in Minneapolis, but I still have, lifelong friends that I made while I was at RIT, and we're all doing interesting things, which is really great.
So Jeremiah's was on Monroe.
Monroe, that was it. So
Yep.
I lived like right off Monroe
Okay.
Avenue behind Jeremiah's Tavern,
Yep.
which is, where I first had buffalo wings. Never actually had them in Buffalo. I had them in Rochester. And I think Jeremiah's Tavern used to have like a wing night, or maybe even like a buffalo wing contest, like eating contest, which I did not take part in. And I did not even judge, even though now I'm a professional pie judge and food judge. I judge like Top Chef and, Top Chef Just Desserts. Actually, this past weekend, I judged the Southside Pie Challenge. So I judge a lot of pie contests. But also, judge on Food Network, like Last Cake Standing and Food Network Challenge, stuff like that.
So the dish is getting rave reviews from everyone, which is great. Jen wants to know, what are some of your other favorite veggie combinations for this awesome dish? Any veggies that would not work particularly well?
No, once you kind of get this concept down, you can go crazy. I mean, you can add cherry tomatoes to this. You can add chopped onion. Start experimenting with what you've got. I don't think there's really a limit. What wouldn't work? Let's think. Eggplant might not be great because, but anything that's good blanched or boiled is going to be delicious in this. You could certainly use different cheeses if you wanted, or maybe even some parm at the end, Parmesan cheese, if you wanted instead of the goat, that would be fine. Because the one thing I'm looking at, I love that it's sort of like 50 Shades of Green, but it would be nice to have a little color in there. So even, those little sweet peppers that are in the grocery store now, I don't think they have a name really, but it's like a little pointy pepper, but they're sweet. They're not spicy. You could julienne those and throw those in at the beginning with the garlic. Give them a little saute heat just to tenderize them a bit, and kind of brown them a little bit to get a little extra flavor. That would be really pretty in there, bring in some yellow or some red. Any kind of pepper, really, bell peppers would work.
Sounds good. And somebody wants to know, if you wanted to add a protein, what would you recommend?
Let's see. I think it would go really well with seafood. So I would recommend adding shrimp, lobster, but that's, kind of luxurious right now, but like lobster, crab meat, maybe even some salmon. I think you could cube up salmon and sort of at the very end, add those cubes, throw a lid on it and sort of steam the salmon. You don't want to stir it too much because you don't want to break it up, but you could have like nice little sort of medium rare cubes of salmon cooked in it. And think how pretty that would be too, the orange with the green. See, that's my art background coming in. And I do want to say that that's part of why I think I had a level of success that a lot of chefs don't get. There's really no explanation of why I got luckier than a lot of other chefs, but because of my art background and my design background, because of going to RIT and art school, I think about things a little differently than other chefs. I think about color contrast, textural contrast. Remember we talked about like the crunch of the pine nuts, with sort of you've got these like soft broccoli now, to really like the crunch is even crunchier when you pair it next to something soft. So I learned about contrast in texture, temperature, color, that really sort of excites the eye and pleases your aesthetics before you even get it in your mouth. Taste is like a whole nother sense that I'm working with as a chef. But I think I have a visual sensitivity that maybe a lot of chefs don't, because they didn't get the chance to go through design training and art school like I did. But I do want to give a shout out to my chef in Rochester, Chef Greg Broman, who was the chef at the Strathallan Hotel for years. And I believe, and he had Chappelle's after that, which I worked at as well. And he has a catering company still in Rochester, though I feel like he owns a wine place. It's something Lago, and it's like a winery where he does weddings and private events. Super talented guy. He raised up a lot of award-winning chefs, me being one of them, Rick Tremonto's another one, Michael Speranza is another one. So a lot of great, important cooks came through his kitchen. So if anyone knows Greg Broman or runs into him, please tell him I say hi. He's the one that sort of talked me out of my art studio and into the kitchen. And I try to thank him as often as I can for that.
So Mary Kay, was it Casa Larga? Is that what you're thinking?
That's it, Casa Larga. Yes.
Mary Kay also said she went to Buffalo Charlie the Butcher's for beef on weck based on your recommendation from your summer trip, and it was delicious.
Right, that's the best beef on weck, and I've had a lot of beef on weck in my life, as you can tell, and I've been to Schlegel's, which is where they say it was invented. I've been to a lot of the classic places for beef on weck, and Charlie the Butcher is not only the best, but he's a super nice guy. He's always there at the location by the airport. He's got, I think, like 5 locations now, but he's usually at the one at the airport, and always comes out and like sits with me and says hello. We've even gotten it to go. Like if you don't have time to sit there and eat it, he'll package it up to go, and he'll keep the rolls separate from the meat, separate from the jus, so that you can put it together at the last minute so it doesn't get soggy. But yes, Charlie the Butcher has the best beef on weck. I've even bought he has like a coarse salt and caraway seed mixture you can buy in a jar to kind of like try to make your own rolls at home. So I'm glad you took my recommendation. Funny, I feel like you guys are watching, where I'm going and what I'm eating. So thank you for doing that. I'm on Facebook I have a Chef Gale Gand page. So yeah, take a look there. You'll see, this will be on there in about 20 minutes. I'll be posting this on there.
Great. And then Amy said the metalsmithing space is so different than your generation for sure.
Yeah, it did look different. And I think we had 2 rooms, and is it just 1 room now or no?
I think it is. I think there's still a grad and undergrad space.
Okay, maybe that's what. But I will tell you, I think last time we cooked together, I wrote a check. And one of the nice things about giving money to RIT is you can specify what department you want it to go to. It doesn't just go necessarily into one big pot. It can. But I decided to give some money specifically to the metalsmithing department at the, I don't think it's called the School for American Craftsmen anymore, but the department that I graduated from, I was able to give some money just to that to help buy some new equipment. So, you feel kind of connected to the next generation that's coming out of there. It's a good feeling. So if you've got the ability to write a check or to give some support to RIT, I really encourage it. It feels very good.
Well, we appreciate that, Gail, for sure. So we appreciate you doing this again for us. It's always great having you with us, and fun to cook along and hear your great stories.
Oh, thank you. It was so flattering when you guys first asked me to be a part of one of these, webinars, and I was flattered. But what's even more flattering is to get invited back. The first invitation, like they don't really know what they're getting into. And if you don't do a good job, you just don't hear from them again. So the fact that you guys invited me back is really extra special. So thank you for including me and for claiming me. You might want to be in denial that I ever went there. So it's very nice. I also really appreciate having a signer with me. I always love seeing what certain words, how to sign certain words. And I had signers at school when I was going to class there. I was mentioning earlier, I took ballet as my gym elective. And so a lot of the signing terms I know are French ballet terms, which isn't super useful. But I think it's nice to be in a school that has an awareness of, not everyone is a hearing person, and there's other foreign languages and other languages, and signing is one of them. My 16-year-old daughter Ruby took American Sign Language 2 years ago before COVID, and we were right on the edge of getting credit as a second language through her high school. COVID happened, so the whole thing fell apart. But I mean, it's a second language, and I really appreciate having a signer here with me. It's so fun always. So it makes me want to swear because I want to see like how you sign a swear word. Let's see. Can I just do badass? How do you sign badass? Yeah, that looks like it. Thank you for indulging me.
Well,
thanks so much.
everybody's saying the food was amazing. It looks like there are a lot of people cooking with you tonight, which is great. One last question for diabetics that don't want to use pasta. Do you have any recommendations? Maybe zucchini?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, there is gluten-free pasta out there if it's the gluten that you're worried about. There's some decent ones out there. Let's think of another. I would maybe use like farro or barley, but I don't know if he's trying to stay away from grains is the thing. But there are some quick cooking barley and farro out there. Farro is like an ancient form of wheat. At Trader Joe's, they have like a 10-minute one that you can get in bags. And so maybe substitute that. You might have to adjust the water a little bit, pull it back a little bit, but that's what I would use instead probably.
Great. Well, Gale, thanks again for sharing your expertise with our alumni and friends today, and thank everybody at home for joining us. The rest of the week's filled with some great programming, including an opportunity to meet RIT's new athletic director, Jackie Nicholson, tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. On Wednesday at 6 p.m., we're offering a new virtual tour of campus, which will allow you to see some of the new and exciting things being built on campus. Other opportunities during the week also include a session on tequila, a keynote given by GCCIS alumnus Alex Kipman, and even a Peloton ride. To see all the events, click the link in the chat box.
Happy homecoming, everybody. Happy homecoming.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not already connected to the RIT Alumni Association social media pages, we also encourage you to do that. So, Gale, again, thank you for joining us and doing this for us again. I hope everybody enjoys all of the virtual events we're having during our virtual homecoming. And if you're going to be on campus or around Rochester, definitely check out some of the exciting events that are going on as well. So,
and happy Indigenous People Day.
Absolutely. Enjoy, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, guys. Thanks for coming.
Bye. Thanks, Gale.
Bye.